Thank you all for coming. We'll get started here. I'm actually going to introduce our speakers as I'm talking, so I hope that's an approach you can all work with. My name is Hugh Copperthwaite. I work for Coastal Enterprises in Portland, Maine, and we are a community development foundation, and we were tasked with looking at the south coast of Massachusetts and the potential economic opportunity for aquaculture now and going forward into the future. My colleague and I, Nick Branchina, over here holding the reports, we spent about 12 months working on this study, which we have copies of today. If you'd like a copy, please see Nick. And over that time, we conducted about 50 interviews with people here on the South Coast to get a sense of the landscape of the industry. I'd like to acknowledge the Garfield Foundation and Santander Bank for their financial support of this project. And I'd like to now introduce Mayor Mitchell and thank him for hosting us here in this beautiful location. Thank you, Mayor Mitchell.
Thanks, Hugh. Thank you, Hugh. Thanks, everybody. Well, when we do press conferences, they're best done in places with scenery like this. This isn't bad. I'm sure nobody wants to go back to the office after we're done, but it's an appropriate place to talk about the initiatives that are being rolled out today. But I want to really just sort of start off by thanking Hugh and CEI for all of their work on what is a very comprehensive report on aquaculture, at least the potential for aquaculture farms on Buzzards Bay. And it's a really terrific report, and it's going to help us in our own efforts, New Bedford being the urban center, being the city on Buzzards Bay. We're right in the thick of it. I think we need to adjust, John. Actually, you could probably just turn it off. Everybody can hear me. Just let's do that. Much better. Raise your hand if you can't hear me. No, I always like doing that joke. But the issuing of the report coincides with a many-month-long effort on the New Bedford Port Authority's part to lay the groundwork for aquaculture here in New Bedford. And it started out a few months ago with something I actually did this morning, and that is to go for a morning run on the Cove Walk. And, we're always thinking about new economic development opportunities. And as I was running along the Cove Walk, I looked out and said, along the wall, right, there's no room for development there. There's no room for a beach. There's no room for piers. There's no room for waterfront homes or anything else. So, and people really don't boat in the area. So, maybe we should be doing aquaculture there. And I knew just vaguely that it had been something that had been growing in other parts of New England, but we really weren't doing it here. And so I just, wondered why isn't, the biggest fishing port in America doing aquaculture? It would seem to fit. So I talked to our port director, Ed, about it, and we're both like, yeah, why aren't we doing it? So we called the folks at DMF in, and I don't know if David Pierce is not here today, Chris Salacci, but we brought them in. We brought them into the office just to talk about this stuff because we knew they regulated it all. And we just posed the threshold question. So is there any reason why we're not doing this? They looked back at us and said, no, there's no good reason why you guys aren't doing this. So we said, okay. So from there, that was Ed, back in December or so, January, thereabouts, several months ago. So we went about the business of taking a hard look at how it could happen here. And we've done some extensive planning and more to come in the months ahead. But as we thought through it, we wouldn't want to do it in a way that would conflict or allow it to conflict with other things going on here. Well, as it turns out, as we discovered, so under Massachusetts law, New Bedford's municipal jurisdiction extends pretty far out to Buzzards Bay, a full 3 miles, and so there's a lot of room there. And with a city permitting is a great deal more simpler and streamlined than it would be in towns where town councils get to weigh in on whether to issue a simple license oftentimes, and that's certainly part of CEI's report. The problems that afflict towns in terms of regulation don't happen when you have a city and a mayoral form of government. So that made some sense. And then I'm just giving you guys the whole background. And then we thought about, well, what about commercial fishing? Well, as it turns out, of course, as a lot of folks here know, that the mobile gear that our scallopers and draggers and clam boats and all the other boats that call New Bedford their home port don't operate in Buzzards Bay and haven't for an awfully long time. So no issue there. And then we reached out to our good friend Andy Herlihy at the Community Boating Center, who's knows more about sailing than has forgotten more about sailing than I'll ever know, and to talk about potential conflicts there. And he said no issue. And then we talked to Mark Rasmussen at the Coalition of Buzzards Bay, and he said no. You guess what? Your water quality is among the highest anywhere in New England, right? And New Bedford's jurisdiction. We might think, well, it's a city, can't be as pure. Well, as it turns out, it is. So we're going like gangbusters, full steam ahead on this stuff, and we put out an RFI, a request for information, a couple of months ago to see whether the market was in fact there, because we can theorize about how it might work here. But then we went ahead and we tested it. Ed put out an RFI, and we got back a number of responses, including from some folks who are here today. So it's all very encouraging, and we think we here in New Bedford can scale this up bigger than anybody, just given that whoever harvests here has to bring it into a USDA facility, and it turns out that New Bedford has more of those on its waterfront, probably more than any port in America. So we're game for this, and we see it, and here's the punchline. We see this as an opportunity to diversify our port, to grow jobs, to create economic opportunity, to develop a new revenue stream for the port, and to elevate the cities and the port's brand. All those things can happen here, and this is a part of a new thing that we can do, a new initiative, a new adventure that we think will add value in so many ways to the city. And I just want to thank Ed and his team for all of their hard work on this up to this point and to come. And it's been, I really appreciate the support of the folks like Seth Garfield, again, who's forgotten more about aquaculture than I will ever know, who's been in the business for a long time and does so many things in the greater New Bedford area to support the civic life of the area. And Scott Soares and everybody else who's played a part in it. What I would just ask people to think about is this takeaway, which is in order for cities to succeed in the long run, in order for ports to succeed in the long run, you have to be entrepreneurial. You have to focus on your assets and play your strengths, but you also have to think about the future and how new opportunities might fit into an existing plan. And so that's what we're really doing here today. It makes perfect sense for New Bedford to be doing more fishing, and that's what this is. And there's a real opportunity for us. So again, thanks everybody for all of your support along the way and to come. And the report that CEI has completed will really help us get the word out about that New Bedford is in the aquaculture business nowadays. Thanks.
Thanks again, Mayor Mitchell. I just wanted to revisit the report for a moment before we hear from our other speakers, and just say that we're here today to recognize that aquaculture is the fastest growing food sector in the world. In the mid-'80s, there were about 30 or 40 people conducting aquaculture in all of Massachusetts, and now there's over 350 permitted growers in the Commonwealth. These farms represent 1,250 acres of production with a farm gate value of $23 million annually. In 2016, the SouthCoast alone represented 23% of the total farm acreage, and in 2017 raised an estimated 2.2 million oysters. The SouthCoast, largely speaking, is relatively new to aquaculture, and the farms are small, with a few exceptions like Seth Garfield here from Cuddyhunk, who has been at it for 37 years. And you'll hear from Seth in a moment. There are some challenges here on the South Coast as a whole because these are small owner-operator farms of half an acre to maybe 2 acres in size. These are smaller producers, smaller production. The geography can also be limiting. With Buzzards Bay, you have significant wind and wave energy pretty much around year-round, and so siting farms can be a challenge. There are also competing uses for space, but having said that, aquaculture can certainly coexist with other uses. Some folks just don't want to see it or know or are afraid of the unknown of aquaculture, but sustainable aquaculture is a environmentally sound practice. Massachusetts towns also have a town residency requirement for aquaculture operations, so that can be a barrier to growth. Having said that, there is very strong interest in recreational harvest here in the Commonwealth, with literally thousands of recreational permits issued each year on the South Coast. The harbor masters, the shellfish wardens, the commercial growers, these are the unsung heroes that are helping to push this industry forward. It's important for aquaculture to have a positive perception, and that begins with the municipal programs, and it's an important aspect for the growth of the industry going forward. In a moment, you'll hear from Ed Anthony's Washburn of the New Bedford Port Authority, and he will echo the mayor's comments about what better place along the South Coast is there for the future hub of aquaculture. New Bedford being the most valuable commercial fishing port in the country and the leading seafood hub on the East Coast. The infrastructure is in place here to support this industry. The report outlines several challenges, opportunities, education and training opportunities, local and regional resources, aquaculture gear and equipment suppliers, hatcheries, and seed sources. This is really a resource for this region to move forward. Lastly, but not least, the report also identifies the importance of the regulatory entities, including the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries and the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture Resources, and the many municipal staff who oversee the permitting and licensing of aquaculture grant sites. Lastly, we'll hear from Scott Soares, who's representing the Massachusetts Aquaculture Association and the Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative, who is collectively tasked with helping to lead the charge going forward for sustainable aquaculture development on the South Coast. Ed, you're up.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Mayor. I'll be honest, the mayor tasks us with many things, and I don't know that any have been as fun as working on as this project.
Try to be more fun.
Thanks, Mayor. So, we've been working on looking at the natural resource, in this case fisheries, and seeing what else we can do in terms of increasing the value of fisheries in New Bedford and regionally. And when the mayor brought this concept up, we were, it's such a perfect fit. In some ways, I'm embarrassed that we haven't been doing it sooner. We've been very focused, and what we've learned since last fall when the mayor brought this up, what we've learned is the strength of our existing businesses on the waterfront, the dozens of shellfish licensees and shellfish holders on the waterfront, but also folks like Ketchum Traps that are over on Penniman Street and that are currently building the gear that aquaculturists around the East Coast are part of. The packages, the PPC and other other seafood processors and handlers are already in the supply chain. It just makes a lot of sense for us to be part of the aquaculture industry here in southeastern Massachusetts. And we're really excited about what that opportunity could mean for New Bedford moving forward as we try to diversify the fisheries that we have in New Bedford. Another key point, we've been working with Andy Herlihy on this, and Andy's been working on aquaculture with Seth Garfield to really figure out how do we turn this resource into an opportunity for New Bedford residents. And Andy and Seth, along with our guys Eli and Brian, have been focused on really figuring out how to build it into the curriculum that Andy's students are going through, so that we can begin to develop the workforce that can take advantage of these opportunities in years to come. So that's another big part of what we're focused on. And I think, obviously we think we can add a lot to the regional aquaculture scene, but we certainly see it as a two-way street. I think, the businesses that are in New Bedford that have supply chains that go all around the world, New Bedford businesses are really good at marketing seafood in other countries, and we think we can bring some of that know-how, and some of the businesses in New Bedford can bring some of that know-how to the regional shellfish industry. So it's certainly a mutually beneficial arrangement. So we're looking forward to moving forward. We thank the mayor for putting this concept in our minds, and we're excited to see what comes of it. Thanks.
Thanks you, and thanks Nick, and thank you Mr. Mayor and your team for what I see as a project that's really 30 years in the making. To give you all a little bit of background, as someone who grew up a town from here, spent a lot of very early mornings on the docks as a fisheries observer back again about 20 years ago, and then was a state's first aquaculture program coordinator going back again almost 20 years. To see the kind of development that's been proposed by the mayor and his team for aquaculture here in the city of New Bedford is nothing short of remarkable. Truly a sea change, I would say, for what you're doing here. But as was mentioned, I'm representing the Massachusetts Aquaculture Association. It's an organization, trade group that represents shellfish growers across the Commonwealth, primarily down on the Cape, but certainly here in the South Coast as well. And the Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative, that's really a collaboration of the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance, the Nature Conservancy, as well as the Massachusetts Aquaculture Association, all aimed at looking at shellfish, not only from the aquaculture perspective, but along with the broader economic and environmental benefits that come from shellfish generally. And again, as someone who grew up not far from here, digging quahogs and picking oysters often with my feet, I can attest that there's great resources available here that could only be stronger with the implementation of more formal aquaculture activities here in the South Coast. So I didn't want to say a whole lot other than really looking forward to working with the team and helping wherever we can from the Aquaculture Association side and again the Massachusetts Shellfish Initiative side to really see this project not only thrive but really add to the development of fisheries and aquaculture as a part of our food system here and in the South Coast and across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So thanks very much, and again thank you Mr. Mayor for all of your work to bring this to fruition. Thanks for being here today.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here to elaborate on this opportunity for the city and the region. I'm pleased to be part of this energy, vision, and necessary direction that is needed to grow high-quality, sustainable seafood. I've been operating a mid-size oyster farm for the last 37 years on Cuttyhunk Island behind me, and I'm proud to have a great-tasting, trademarked Cuttyhunk oyster that is produced and grown in the clean waters of Buzzards Bay. We supply directly to local restaurants and wholesalers, as well as direct our oyster lovers through our own popular raw bar. Throughout the decades of growing and marketing our locally produced bivalves, our company has needed the services of our local banks, trucking companies, restaurants, labor forces, supply houses, ice houses, seafood buyers and sellers to help move and promote our oysters locally throughout New England. Aquaculturists in our area have also been very fortunate to have the support of the regulatory agency of the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries located right here in New Bedford. And recently their aquaculture specialist, Chris Salachi, who's here today, has been very, very supportive, creative, and informative to our industry as we continue to grow more shellfish for the state of Massachusetts. We also have a well-developed state organization, as Scott just mentioned, of the Mass Aquaculture Association. that's been in existence for 30 years, but we're hoping Scott takes us to a whole new level, especially about having a strong voice in Boston, which makes some of the decisions that we operate under. In the South Coast region, there is a wealth of talented men and women with water-related experiences that are available to assist in aquaculture expansion, keeping up with the New Bedford's proud heritage in the fishing industry. So we look forward to utilizing their talents. Our area of Buzzards Bay has also been blessed, as you've heard, with the Buzzards Bay Coalition, which has been monitoring and improving water quality in our area for over the last 30 years. Fortunately, with their insight and their leadership, the coalition has educated the public and local decision makers in keeping the bay so clean that we can grow delicious shellfish in the future. Our area also has a very diverse educational resource with UMass Dartmouth, SMAST right across the way, Roger Williams University with Dale Levitt and Woods Hole Oceanographic to help educate, train, and promote aquaculture for this area. We have the leadership that has the vision to investigate and research the future potential of aquaculture in New Bedford and Buzzards Bay. With the energy from Mayor Mitchell's office, the follow-through with Ed Washburn's staff and office folks, and the philanthropic vision of the Garfield Foundation and the Santander Bank, we now have a very comprehensive overview and summary of the status and opportunities that aquaculture has for our region. It is clear there is a great opportunity to expand aquaculture production here in the New Bedford waters. All the pieces of the puzzle for successful aquaculture are here and ready to go. As an example, as you've heard, there is a plan to get a small-scale educational oyster farm going with the Community Boating Center and Andy Hurley over in Clark's Cove, right over here. What better way for students to learn about clean water, sailing, and aquaculture during the summer while the bay is alive and active? We know one of those students might be a future oyster farmer or shellfish farmer, and I plan on helping be one of the instructors there this summer. I'm proud to have a successful, sustainable oyster farm that provides jobs, education for kids, growing delicious oysters, and giving back to the community as all good businesses should. I look forward to supporting and mentoring this program in the future. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, sure. We're welcome to take any questions for any of our speakers here today.
Covered it all.
Going
Yep.
once.
Covered it all.
You mentioned 3 miles. New Bedford has 3 miles.
Yeah.
And what sort of radius, Mayor? Is it like?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially a rectangle that goes from the middle of the Acushnet River in the middle of Clark's Cove straight out to Buzzards Bay and is cornered off.
It's a lot of area you can farm.
Yeah. All right, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
More to come.
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.